I'm Kimberly from Lakeside Loops, and this is the video tutorial for the Hailey heart cutout hat. Today I'm going to show you how to make this hat, what materials are required. There is a free written copy of this pattern that you can download from Ravelry. Again, it's called the Hailey heart cutout hat. So if you head to Ravelry, and I'll provide the link below, you can download the written pattern for free, and then you'll have it to follow along with the video tutorial, or if you want to watch the video tutorial and then have the written pattern to take with you for places where you don't have access to YouTube, it's there for you to use for free. I am a stay-at-home mama, or a work-from-home mama, who lives on the east coast of Canada with my hubby and my two sweet little girls on a small little lake, thus the Lakeside in Lakeside Loops. And normally I write crochet patterns and sell them on Etsy and Ravelry and my own website, lakesideloops.com, but this is my very first free crochet pattern and I am so excited to share it with you guys. So what you need is a 7mm crochet hook, or something smaller, because we want to make sure that our stitches are really close together and there aren't a lot of holes in this hat. So for sizing, you're going to need a 7mm or even smaller. You're also going to need some super bulky weight yarn. I used Bernat Softy Chunky. I also used Loops and Threads Lush Alpaca. I just have the label left because I used it to make this sweet hat. And also Woolie's Thick and Quick by Lion Brand, which is this beautiful marble color right here, will work really well as well. If you want the details on which yarns I used and what colors I used, you can find all of that information in the written pattern. Some optional things that you might want for this pattern as well would be a faux fur pom-pom or a yarn pom-pom, and again, details are in the written pattern on where I got all of my supplies. And you also might want a stitch marker. So if you don't have traditional stitch markers, I'm going to show you in the video tutorial how you could use a paper clip or even just a simple piece of yarn in a contrasting color. And one other thing, for this pattern, you can use just one color, one solid color, or if you feel inclined to buy a contrasting color yarn, or if you happen to have a contrasting color yarn, you could use that to outline your heart shape when you're finished. So this is without outlining the heart shape, and this is once you outline the heart shape. So you don't need to do that, it's just an extra added touch if you'd like to do it. Because you don't use a lot of yarn, I didn't want to make it a must-have because I didn't want you to buy a whole skein of yarn or a whole ball of yarn just to outline the heart. So it is optional if you do or you don't want to do that. So you can either just go with the base color, or if you want to add a contrasting color, you could pick that up as well, or if you happen to have it on hand. So without further ado, let's get into the pattern. So this hat can be worked up in two different sizes. One is the kid size and one is the adult size. The kid size really could fit an adult depending on the size of your head, and the adult size is on the large side. So if you wanted to have a snugger fitting hat, then the child size and possibly just adding an extra round at the bottom might be your best bet. That's why the gauge is really important with this pattern, because of the thick yarn that we're using. The sizes that you end up with are on the larger side, so you want to make sure that you have the right gauge and you're using the smaller 7mm crochet hook with this pattern. Alright, so let's dive in. For round 1, you want to chain 3, chain of 3, and then you want to work 7 half double crochets into the third chain from your hook. So 1, 2, 3. So this first chain is where you're going to be working in 7 half double crochets. So there's 1, and a half double crochet, if you're not familiar, is you yarn over, insert your hook, and pull your yarn through, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now we're going to join our round. I like slip stitching into my first half double crochet, and I pull my yarn really tight and make just a really small slip stitch into that first half double crochet that I made. Now for round 2, I'm going to chain 2, and I'm going to work 2 herringbone double crochets in each stitch around. I'm going to work my first herringbone double crochet into the stitch that I just slip stitched into, so my first half double crochet from my previous round. So a herringbone double crochet is you're going to yarn over just like a regular double crochet. You're going to insert your hook, grab your yarn, and you're going to pull it through your stitch and this first loop on your hook. So I've grabbed my yarn, I'm going to pull it through that and the first loop on my hook. Now I'm going to yarn over again and pull it through just one loop, and then yarn over and pull it through 2. So I need to make a second herringbone double crochet in that same stitch. So again, yarn over, insert your hook, grab your yarn and pull it through the stitch and the first loop on your hook, yarn over and pull through 1, and then yarn over and pull through 2. And again, 2 herringbone double crochets in each stitch all the way around. Alright, so I've skipped ahead a little bit here and I'm at the end of round 2. After you've finished putting 2 herringbone double crochets in each stitch, so you should have 14 herringbone double crochets all together, you're going to put a stitch marker in your last stitch that you made. I'm going to show you some different options if you don't have a traditional stitch marker. So if you have a traditional stitch marker, you just slip it in and lock it. If you don't have one of these little guys, you could also use a paper clip. So just bend one end out like this, insert it into your stitch, and then bend it back to lock it in place. Another option for you, if you don't have a paper clip handy, is to just grab a contrasting color yarn, take your hook out of your work, and place it in the last stitch that you made. Grab your contrasting color yarn and pull it through just like that, and then put your yarn, or sorry, your hook back into where you were. So that'll just, you could tie a knot if you wanted to, but depending on how long your yarn is, that should mark your place for you. Now we're going to join our round. I like, again, to slip stitch into the first stitch I made in the round. So my first herringbone double crochet, a really tight little slip stitch. And now for round 3, we're going to chain 2 and we're going to turn. So we're going in the opposite direction around our circle, and we're going to work a herringbone double crochet into the first stitch, which is the one that we marked with our stitch marker. So insert your hook, and now you can remove your stitch marker, and in the next stitch we're going to put 2 herringbone double crochets. And so for round 3, it's 1 herringbone double crochet followed by 2 herringbone double crochets all the way around. And again, when you get to your last stitch, you want to place a stitch marker. So I've skipped ahead a little bit again. I'm at the end of round 3 and I've done 21 herringbone double crochets all the way around, and in my last stitch I've put a stitch marker to mark my place. Now I'm going to join my round by slip stitching into the first stitch that I made in this round, just a really tight slip stitch to join everything together. Now at the end of round 3, we're going to check our gauge just to make sure that everything's going the way that it should and our hat's going to turn out to be the right size. So if you grab a ruler or some measuring tape and you lay it across the middle of your circle, it should be approximately 4 inches. If you have something that is larger than 4 inches, you should decrease your hook size. So you want to go from a 7mm crochet hook to something a little bit smaller. If your hat so far is smaller than 4 inches, then you need to go up a hook size. And just keep experimenting rounds 1 to 3 until you get something that is approximately 4 inches. So for round 4, we're going to chain 2, and again we're going to turn and work the opposite way around our hat. This pattern you're just going to be going back and forth, working from one side or around one side and then around the other side. That's going to create this really great herringbone look with the herringbone double crochet and then working back and forth. So again, our first stitch is going to go where our stitch marker is. So I've yarned over, insert my hook, and I've done my herringbone double crochet. For round 4, the repeat is you're going to herringbone double crochet in the next 2 stitches and then 2 herringbone double crochet in the stitch after that. So there's 1 herringbone double crochet, 1 in the next stitch, and now 2 in this 3rd stitch. And that is the repeat for this round. So 1, 2, and then 2 in the same stitch. So I've almost completed round 4, and I just wanted to show you guys at the end of each round, while we're doing these increases, your last set of stitches should be the 2 herringbone double crochets into 1 stitch, and you're actually working into the stitch where you joined your previous round. So it might not look like there's room there, but if you just yarn over and you can make 2 herringbone double crochets in that last stitch, just like that. And then again, I join 2, but actually before I join, can't forget, I need to place my stitch marker in my last stitch, which is hard to do on camera, as it turns out. There we go. Sorry guys. So again, I'm going to join my round by slip stitching into my first stitch from this round. So that is the end of round 4. Round 5, you can probably guess what we're going to do. We're going to chain 2, and we're going to turn, and we're going to work our first stitch into where we've marked right here. And for round 5, the repeat is to herringbone double crochet in each of the first 3 stitches and then 2 herringbone double crochet in the stitch after that. Alright, so I've almost completed round 5. I've skipped ahead again. I just need to join my round, and if you're following along with the written pattern, you will see that if you're making the kid size, you're going to stop here and you're going to skip ahead to round 8. If you're making the adult size, you're going to increase your hat with 1 more round before moving on to round 7 and then round 8. So on the screen here, I'm going to write out what steps you need to take next, but in the video tutorial, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit for the sake of keeping this video short and sweet. So again, just finishing up round 5. If you're doing the kid size, you stop here and go to round 8. If you are doing the adult size, here are the details for round 6 and round 7. And now I'm going to skip the video ahead to round 8. So if you're doing the adult size, just pause the video, do round 6, round 7, and meet me back for round 8. So for round 8, this is really easy. We're just going to chain 2, we're going to turn, and we're going to herringbone double crochet into our marked stitch, and we're going to herringbone double crochet in each stitch all the way around. So we're done with our increases, and now we're just going to work a herringbone double crochet in each stitch all the way around. So I've skipped ahead again, and I'm just about to finish up round 8, and I just wanted to point out that this is where keeping an eye on your your stitch count becomes even more important, because it can be really easy to lose track of your stitches when you're not doing any increases. And your last stitch will always go into, again, where you joined your round in your previous round, which can be a little bit deceptive. It doesn't look like there's room for a stitch there, but in this pattern, that's where we want it to go. So at the end of round 8, if you're doing the child size, you should have 35 herringbone double crochets, and if you're doing the adult size, you should have 42 herringbone double crochets before you join your round. And before I do that, I'm actually going to mark my last stitch. And now I'm going to join to the first stitch I made in this round. Again, a really tight little slip stitch, and then on to round 9, I'm chaining 2, I'm turning, and it's a repeat of round 8, so you're just herringbone, double crocheting all the way around. Alright, so I've skipped ahead on you guys again, and I just finished round 9, and now we're going to start working in rows to create our heart cutout. So basically we've done to this point, and now we're going to be working back and forth in rows to create a gap here. Actually, it will look like a triangle before it looks like a heart, but bear with me, I promise when we're done it will be a heart, but first it's going to look like just a triangle, and then we'll add this bit after the fact. So for round 10, you are going to chain 2, turn, and beginning again in the marked stitch, you're going to herringbone double crochet all the way around, except you're going to stop, you're going to leave 5 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you're doing the kid size, that means you're only going to do 30 herringbone double crochets, and if you're doing the adult size, that means you're going to do 37 herringbone double crochets. And again, you're going to want to place a stitch marker in the last stitch that you make in round 10, or sorry, row 10. Now we're working in rows. So I'm now at the end of row 10, and you can see I have 5 stitches left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've placed a stitch marker in the last stitch that I made, and I'm going to begin row 11. So I'm going to chain 2, and beginning in my marked stitch, I want, so right here, the very first hole that you see, really, you want to place 2 herringbone double crochets. Oops. I'm actually going to take this out because it's easier without it there, now that I know where I'm working into. Sorry guys, this is so hard to do on camera. Apparently. So a second herringbone double crochet into that same stitch. Okay, and now you're going to herringbone double crochet in each stitch all the way around. And what we're doing is we're going to be making a triangle. This is the bottom, and then our sides are going to go up and we'll meet again and start joining and working in the round again. So we're just creating a triangle in these rows. Alright, so I've just finished row 11, and I lied to you guys. I said herringbone double crochet all the way around, but in fact your last stitch should be 2 herringbone double crochets. So make sure you've got 2 herringbone double crochets in your last stitch for a total of 32 herringbone double crochets if you are doing the kid size, and if you're doing the adult size, you should have 39 herringbone double crochets. And if you have trouble knowing where to stop your row or where to work those last 2 herringbone double crochets, just keep an eye on your stitch count. That will give you an idea or tell you exactly when to stop. And also another option is when you start your rows for rows 11, 12, and 13, you can put a stitch marker in the first stitch that you make, and that will tell you where to stop when you come back around to the end of the next row. So for row 12, we're just chaining 2, turning, and we're doing the same thing again that we did in row 11. So we're going to put 2 herringbone double crochets in our first stitch and 2 herringbone double crochets in our last stitch, and in between we're just herringbone double crocheting in each stitch in between those increases. So again, we're creating a triangle here, and we're trying to close it up and make a point at the top. So I just finished row 12, and as you can see, we're getting sort of this misshapen triangles starting to come together. Row 13 is more of the same. You're going to chain 2. Sorry, and to go back, at the end of row 12 you should have 34 herringbone double crochets for the kid size, or 41 herringbone double crochets for the adult size. So for row 13, again, we're going to do more of the same. We're chaining 2, we're working 2 herringbone double crochets into this first stitch, herringbone double crocheting all the way around, and then 2 more herringbone double crochets into the last stitch. So I've skipped ahead again, and I'm at the end of row 13, and now we're going to join our row to actually make a round. So we're going to slip stitch into the first stitch that we made. Again, just a really tight slip stitch, and now you can see this sad misshapen looking triangle, which we're going to turn into a very sweet little heart. So this is the trickiest part of the pattern coming up. So now that we've joined our row, we're going to turn our hat so that our newly formed triangle is facing up. So we're going to flip our hat over so our triangle is facing up, and now you can see the triangle shape a little bit better. Now we're going to rotate counterclockwise so that one side of the triangle is parallel to us. We're going to grab our hook and our yarn, and we are going to be slip stitching along this side of the triangle. Now there aren't traditional stitches to slip stitch into, so you're just going to slip stitch into anywhere where you see a space. So anywhere where you see, I shouldn't say a space, anywhere where you see room to make a slip stitch, like right in here, I'll show you as we go, you make a slip stitch. You can't really go wrong. If you do too many slip stitches, it might look a little crowded on the side. I'll show you here. It might look a little crowded on the side of your heart if you do too many slip stitches, and if you don't do enough, it might pull your heart sort of tight together. So I did approximately 6 or 7 along each side of my heart, but it's entirely up to you. You can kind of play around with it to see what works best and gives you a shape that you like. So this is what we're doing right now. We're slip stitching along this side of our triangle. So I've pulled my hat a little closer here so that you can see, get a better look at what I'm doing. So I'm just going in to anywhere where I can fit my hook, and I'm creating a nice loose slip stitch. And this can be a little bit easier said than done. Sometimes I have to actually pull the yarn onto my hook, just like that. And we're working our way along the side of this triangle. Again, keep your slip stitches nice and loose. Until you get to the end of that first side of the triangle. So once you finish this side of your hat, you're going to turn your hat counterclockwise again, so that the bottom of the triangle or a new side of the triangle is facing you. And this is the side where we skipped the 5 stitches in row 10. So it'll be a lot easier to see where, sorry, just zooming in. So it'll be a lot easier to see where you should place your slip stitches or stitches in this part of the triangle. So you're going to slip stitch into the first 2 stitches. And now you're going to chain 1, and you're going to work a herringbone double crochet into the next stitch. And this is making the point for our triangle, or sorry, the point for our heart. We're doing this point right here. Now we're going to chain 1 again, and we're going to work a slip stitch into the next 2 stitches. So that is it for this side. You can see our heart starting to take shape here. Now we're going to rotate our hat counterclockwise again, and we're going to slip stitch along the 3rd side of our triangle. So all along here we're going to slip stitch again, just working into wherever we can find a space. Alright, so again, working along that side, I've done 6 slip stitches, but you might have 7 or you might have 5, whatever you think looks best for your hat. And as you can see now, we have a heart shape. So to finish this off, you're going to slip stitch into where you joined your round. So you can see where you have your stitch marker here. It's just over from that is where you're going to slip stitch into, it might be a little hard to get your hook in there. Oh. All right. Now for the next round 14, we're going to chain 2. And beginning in our stitch that has a stitch marker, we're going to herringbone double crochet all the way around our hat, and we're working with the outside of our hat facing out. So you're going this way around your hat. Alright, so I'm at the end of round 14. If you're doing the kid size, you should have 36 herringbone double crochets. If you're doing the adult size, you should have 43. And to join my round, I'm going to slip stitch into my first stitch from this round, just like that. So you can leave your hat, well, fasten this off and weave your ends in, but you can leave your hat just like this, without, there we go, without working a contrasting color around. Or if you'd like, you can, and here's another example of it done without the contrasting color being worked around. Or if you'd like, if you have a contrasting color or you picked one up, you can work this around your heart by slip stitching to create sort of, or highlight the heart cutout shape. And I'll show you how to do that now. So you're going to insert your hook into the bottom of your heart. And you're going to grab your yarn, your contrasting color, and pull it up through. I don't worry about securing this end yet. I'm going to tie it with my yarn when I come back around and pull it tighter. So I just leave this as is. So I've got this loop on my hook here, and what you're going to do is work into the back loop of your slip stitches all the way around. So this is the front loop, this is the back loop. And you're going to just slip stitch into each back loop until you get to the point, and then there's something a little bit different that you need to do. So when you get to the point in your heart at the top, in my case where I slip stitched 6 on the sides here, where I slip stitched 6, I've done 9 slip stitches, and now for my 10th, or before I make my 10th, I'm actually going to chain 1, then slip stitch, and then, sorry, my yarn's caught. Let me try that again. So you're going to chain 1, then slip stitch, and then chain 1 again before going back into slip stitching into the back loops. And what that does is give you a little more room for your heart to make a little point there. So I've slip stitched the rest of the way around, and now I'm just going to cut my yarn and pull it through, and then I'm going to come in from behind, or the inside of my hat, and I'm going to pull that end down through to the inside. Now on the inside, I'm going to take those 2 light pink ends and I'm going to tie them together to secure them before weaving them in. Alright, so this is the finished product, and again, it's up to you whether you outline the heart cutout in a contrasting color or not. This is it without the contrasting color, and here it is with the contrasting color. You can add a fur pom-pom or a yarn pom-pom, or you can not if you would rather not have the pom-pom on top. It's entirely up to you. So that is the end of our video tutorial. If you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to email me. It's lakesideloops@gmail.com. I'm wearing the adult size hat. I have a really huge head, So if you have a more petite head, you might even want to, see, I haven't tucked my hands in yet, you might want to use the child size hat. The hat is really stretchy, so depending on what size head you want, this is what the adult size hat looks like on a larger adult head, and this is the child size hat, which I do think would fit some adults, but it does fit my children's heads as well, but it is very stretchy. So again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. You can visit my website, lakesidaloops.com, to sign up for our newsletter if you're interested in not missing out on free patterns or new patterns that we have coming up. Also, if you're on social media, if you're on Facebook, Instagram, I would love for you to check out our page. I love meeting fellow crocheters and interacting and seeing what you're making. So my handles are all at Lakeside Loops. So check us out. I'll post some links below. And thank you guys so much for watching along. I hope that you enjoyed this video tutorial, and I hope to post more free patterns in the future. Take care.